introduce at this time Harry Bruce McNeil. His name is Harry, but he goes by Bruce. But to try to describe all of the things that he has done is next to impossible. Bruce is a lifelong resident of Dothan, been very active in the community in both professional and volunteer capacities. Bruce retired from the fire service in 1994 and Southeast Alabama Health in 2015. Served on many community boards, past and present, and continues to do so. Bruce has been in the Dothan Rotary Club since 1998 and served in many capacities, including club president. He's also held many roles in Rotary International, the Zone, and District 6880, most recently having served as district governor in 21-22. Received a number of club and district awards over the years. As I said, Bruce has been involved in many Rotary projects, and this is one that he's been working on for over 3 years now. So, Governor Bruce, thank you. Podium's yours.
Thank you, Graham. Judge, before I start, you know, Rotarians are much kinder than JCs. Judge and I were in JC a few years ago, and there was a couple of us that would stand up and talk to the club, and somebody in the back would always say, "Bruce, stand up." So, they were tough back then on us, but like I say, you were very kind today. Well, our journey has been pretty exciting, to say the least. A few little challenges, a few little bumps in the road, not quite sure if we were going to make it, because regardless of what you think, it's all about the dollar. But Graham told me it's not all about the dollar, it's about what the dollar can do. So there's been a lot of gracious people with the dollar that helped us come today to do what we're doing today. But the whole journey has been like 1,000 pieces of puzzle. And, you know, I never have successfully put together 1,000 pieces of puzzle, but I have attempted to try, and it's pretty frustrating. But, you know, when you finally get those four corners together, things start falling in place there. If you got a picture that you can go by, it's easy to start the process there. So this particular project, the Tuskegee Polio Recognition Project, has been one of those 1,000-piece puzzles. But when you start adding people like Dr. Morris that graciously gave us the initial go-ahead to do this project, and you got Cheryl Ferguson, Dana Chandler, and this gentleman here, you know, all of a sudden it comes together. It starts being much easier to do. And what started out something so simple got a little more complicated along the way with that 1,000-piece puzzle. So we're here today, and we're happy that all the work we put in is finally coming. But it takes a lot of people helping me and Graham with that puzzle to do. You know, Rotary has come a long way in a lot of things. John Jerome is going to talk a little about the history of Rotary and Polio in just a little bit. But Rotary is very important to what we're doing here today. You know, in Rotary District 6880 is kind of led the charge of this particular project. The Rotarians in this district, all the clubs, you know, basically we have 48 clubs, over 2,000 members, and every one of those clubs does a wonderful job throughout the district. So it takes a lot of pieces of the puzzle to put this thing together. You know, Rotary's got a lot of history. I think John's going to talk to you about those in just a little bit. But our Rotary district from Clinton, Alabama South has been behind this project and supporting this project in more ways than one. But the journey's pretty interesting. You know, there's a lot of things. Some of the best ideas start with a backyard discussion, doesn't it? Somebody plants the seed. Somebody like Sam Adams that just kind of give you the encouragement. He knows we need to do something. He just doesn't know exactly what we need to do. But there's just so much history in Tuskegee, Alabama, and here at Tuskegee University that there's got to be a wonderful story. And when you go to the museum, there's a lot of information there, but it's a well-kept secret. But we want to do something that kind of brought, hopefully, local attention, regional attention, and we aim to make it national attention out of this, because when this day is over, we'll continue to submit information. But Sam Adams planted the seed. Sam is a delegate. He planted the seed and sent me on this wild goose chase, Sam. I remember distinctly, couldn't find somebody to go look for. But in the meantime, I found a man called Daniel Chandler that knew more about Tuskegee, Alabama, Tuskegee University, and the Gila cell, and the fight against polio, and all the wonderful things that were going on here in Tuskegee, Alabama, and at the university. And all of a sudden, what little bit I knew, my knowledge grew. And then we looked through a lot of documents, Dan, and we found this picture that you'll see the statue of today. In fact, there's a picture up there. We'll talk about those individuals later. But it was the perfect picture. It said exactly what we wanted it to say. And then on the monument, you'll see a lot of descriptions, people involved, the trustees, back in the day, the trustees that are current. So there's a lot of information to be sharing. I hope everyone can make the unveiling a little bit later on. When we get through with this phase, and like I say, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into it, but Graham, it's like polio, John Jerm. We're this close on it. As soon as we unveil the thing, but you know what? We're not through. Angela, my wife, thought we were through, but we're not through. We still got another project to do. Hopefully it'll be a lot easier than this one. But, we're talking about the people that took care of the black population in the Tuskegee area, that they did the trench. They put them in that swimming pool in the bottom of that old poliomyelitis treatment center, and they took care of them. They built braces, and the list goes on and on, all the wonderful things they did, for their community. But that's just part of the story. And the second half is the Gila cell story. If you don't know what a Gila cell is, you need to go look it up, and tons of information. And I don't have time to go into all the details, but phase number 2 is the Gila cell. And we'll be trying to figure out what that consists of in the near future. So we hope that with our other funding, and I'll be talking about all the supporters a little bit later, but with all the dollars we've gotten in, I think we'll have enough money to get started on the second phase with the Gila cell in a different part of the campus there. So we're so excited about that. Well, I'm going to stop there, and you just be thinking about that 1,000-piece puzzle that we talked about. And the next gentleman, he can talk for hours on end, but we only gave him just a few minutes. So, Graham, you want to introduce the next speaker?
Bruce, as you were saying, we're at that point today where this is the fun part. Well, this is the most fun part. It's all been fun, but this is where we get to celebrate the work that everybody has done. Our next presenter is Dana Campbell. And as Bruce said, Dana was the one that helped us get basically all of the research done, the background information to make this possible. Dana is a trained archivist and historian receiving his graduate degree from Auburn University. He works as University Archivist, Associate Professor of History here at Tuskegee University, and is a co-author of To Raise Up the Man Farthest Down, Tuskegee University's Advancement in Human Health, 1881 to 1987. He's had over 90 presentations at various venues and teaches history in the Department of History and Political Science. Dana, without you, we couldn't have made this happen. Come tell us about it.
Welcome to Tuskegee historic Tuskegee. There's so much, as they've said, that I could talk about Tuskegee, and I would love to tell you all about it. That we'll be here tomorrow and on. I often thought while working on this project and while working on my book, my Edie's book, my co-authors here, Dr. Edith Powell, today, and while working on that, I asked a question: why Tuskegee? Why Tuskegee? Why not Meharry or Howard or John Hopkins, or why not? Why Tuskegee? Booker T. Washington, when he came here, had a saying that he wanted his students to have a healthy head, hand, and heart. He wanted his students to be healthy so they could be able to work and they could be able to learn. He wanted them to have healthy hands so they could learn to work, and a healthy heart, which I think is very, very important. The spiritual aspect of Tuskegee. And there's so much about it. The spirit of Tuskegee is all around us. First hospital for African Americans in the state of Alabama, John E. Andrew Memorial Hospital, here at Tuskegee. The National Medical Association, the black wing of the AMA, began here at Tuskegee. The journal published by John A. Kinney, whom our building is now named after, John A. Kinney Hall, where the John A. Andrew Memorial Hospital was located. John Kinney started the National Medical Association Journal, on which he was the editor for many, many years. John Kinney was an amazing man. He was Booker T. Washington's doctor. And he spearheaded many things that went on here at Tuskegee when it comes to the medical field. The first 4-year degree in nursing in the state of Alabama, Tuskegee University. And you know, I could actually spend a long time talking about all of our firsts. So many firsts here at Tuskegee. There's visits by Eleanor Roosevelt and her husband, you know him, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, that really made a difference for us when it came to polio and our work with polio. Through their efforts, and I think Eleanor deserves as much credit as FDR regarding her influence to help us have the Infantile Paralysis Center, which that statue is placed in front of. The polio FDR no doubt made a difference as he was at Warm Springs, Georgia, in close proximity to us here. He became aware of Tuskegee, and his main attorney and friend, Basil O'Connor, of which our medical school is in the the Basil O'Connor Hall. He, a Board of Trustees member, by the way, here at Tuskegee, he's the one that pushed for something very important, something unique, something that's never happened before at any other school or any place in America, and hasn't happened afterwards. They built the Infantile Paralysis Center with funds from the March of Dimes. The only building that March of Dimes ever paid for to have constructed. And why? Why Tuskegee? Because doctors assumed that blacks could not get polio until one tried to come for treatment at Warm Springs. It was turned away. So, introduce the world to blacks with polio, which the black community already knew that. They're already aware of it. But because of the work of Basil O'Connor and the March of Dimes, we were able to procure that facility, which was the only facility in this region, and yes, probably America, that was specific for the treatment of polio by blacks. It was run by blacks. It was managed by blacks. In fact, the doctor that was over the medical center, Dr. Dibble, Eugene Dibble, made sure that it was well taken care of. And then I could talk about the HeMa cell. Some of you have read The Immortal Cells of Henrietta Locke's, on which 2 pages talk about what Tuskegee was able to do. We wrote 255 pages more about the subject. You have Jimmy Henderson and Russell Brown, who were over at the Harbor Center. Very important individuals because of their work. Jimmy Henderson's work with seeds and things of that nature that helped him understand the development of the cell cultures. Russell Brown, who was over the project that would eventually lead to the largest single, unless you count the COVID thing, which I don't know you can, the largest single field trial the world has ever known and probably will ever know again. The development of the Salk and vaccines. And Tuskegee was actually instrumental in that being accomplished. Did you know that? No, you didn't. You didn't know that. You weren't aware of that. Well, that we're trying to make up for that. For those many years when people didn't know about us. Salk vaccine, very important, of course. And the 11 laboratories that had the job of creating the Salk vaccine for that field trial had to have cells. And those cells came from cells from Henrietta Larks. Now, Tuskegee University was able to replicate those cells and feed those cells and send those cells around the country. In the process of that, we invented many things that have to do with that process. And you could thank Jimmy Henderson and Russell Brown and their staff for what they did. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. Now, I could go into great detail about all the other things that happened with that. How important it was for us to make sure that the cells were well sealed. How they were originally traveled by car or bus or whatever. And then by plane. But nonetheless, it was successful. And it was successful because of Tuskegee. We need to remember that. That's what we're celebrating here today. That work that was started by Booker T. Washington so many years ago, an attempt to help the students and the population around the community to have a better life, medically, physically, and then that reaches out to the world by all the work that we've been able to accomplish. Y'all don't know this, but we have some world-class scientists here amongst us. We have one right here, Dr. Prakash, a world-class scientist. We have scientists that are working on cure for cancer. This is an amazing place, y'all. There's much more to Tuskegee than Alice Coachman Davis, the first African-American woman to win a gold medal at the Olympics. Or Nell Jackson, the first African-American woman to coach an Olympic team. Or Cleve Abbott, the first, well, he won 14 national championships on his own. And I could go on and on. But I won't. Yay, Tuskegee. Yay, Tuskegee. And when for those of you that know, when I say T-U, you say? You know. You know. Turn it back over to him.
That's right. Given the opportunity, we'd be here until sometime on Friday evening. And he never would slow down. It's indeed an honor for me to be able to introduce our next presenter, Dr. Charlotte Morris, who is the president of Tuskegee University. I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Morris this morning. Dr. Morris, about 5:15, as we were standing out, getting ready for her to be interviewed by WSFA. Dr. Morris began her tenure at Tuskegee University, 9th University President, 1 year ago this past Monday, August 1st, 2021. That followed 3 stints as interim president of Tuskegee. They finally got it right. Said, good job, Mary. Dr. Morris is a native of Kosciuszko, Mississippi, and she said, I bet you don't know where that is. And I said, yes, I do, and I told her. She was surprised. She said, you know, the only other famous person from Kosciuszko is Oprah Winfrey. So you got something in common. She completed her bachelor's degree in business education at Jackson State University, a master's degree in business administration and management at Delta State University, and a PhD in education and business management from Kansas State University. She's a resident of Montgomery since 1983. Dr. Morris is a Golden Life member of the Montgomery Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, member and former president of the Agnes J. Lewis Women's Club, member of the Lilly Missionary Baptist Church, where she serves on the usher board as a Sunday school teacher and a member of the Mission Circle. She's also held membership in the Society for Human Resource Management, Beta Gamma Sigma National Honor Society in Business, the Golden Key National Honor Society, and the National Council of Negro Women. She has been a member of Leadership Montgomery's Class 29, Tuskegee University's Distinguished Administrative Staff Achievement Award, Bush Foundation Fellow. Dr. Morris was married to the late Dr. William Morris and is the parent of one adult son. Dr. Morris, I don't know how you're going to top what you did this morning on WSFA, but we look forward to hearing from you.
Wow, how would you respond to an introduction like that? Anyway, greetings to all of you. You've heard the history, so I don't need to revamp that. You know the history, you read about it, and you heard a snip of it from Dana Chandler this morning. So I'm delighted just to welcome you on behalf of our Board of Trustees, faculty, staff, and students at Tuskegee University. We are honored to host today's celebration acknowledging the work of the Tuskegee Paralysis Center on this campus, where doctors and researchers were dedicated to treating and eradicating polio in the African American community and throughout the United States. We express appreciation to the Rotary District 6880.
Yes, ma'am.
For that, and its members for your work with this project. And we also extend a hearty welcome to Judge Thompson. We look forward to being inspired by what you have to say today that relates directly to what we are celebrating. I want to thank also the Macon County Development Authority for sponsorship of this function. More importantly, we want to express our gratitude to our former chair of the Board of Trustees, the late Basil O'Connor, for whom our major nursing building is named, who was instrumental in helping to create the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis, which later became, as you heard, the March of Dimes. He had a unique perspective that informed him of Tuskegee's capabilities like no other experience could. In a segregated America, and remember we're talking about 1930, he saw what Tuskegee researchers were doing and supported their work for the good of our community and the nation. We applaud his fortitude and the resilience of the researchers at the Carver Research Center, who contributed significantly to the national rollout of the vaccine and the eradication of polio in this country and beyond. Tuskegee researchers are still in the labs making strides toward eradication of other diseases today, including, as you heard, cancer. Again, we want to thank the Rotary for the idea, for the fundraising efforts, for their political savvy, which they had to have with the Alabama State Legislature, and all that went into this project. Thank you for this opportunity. We are delighted that you are on our campus today for this recognition project and the unveiling of this very important statue on our campus.
Morris, thank you very much for allowing us to be here. You mentioned, and Dana also mentioned Basil O'Connor and the work that he did, and the connection as the first chairman of the March of Dimes. We have some representatives from the March of Dimes here today. Y'all would stand up back in the back, and we just, y'all are part of the history. We're glad you could be here. To recognize some folks that have been key players in making this happen. Our next presenter is Dr. Dale Goodman, the current district governor for Rotary District 6880. Dale was born and raised in Camden, Alabama, and later moved to Dublin. Currently serves as executive director of the Alabama Association of School Personnel Administrators, and serves as well as a board member of the National Association of School Personnel Administrators. I don't know how she has time to do what she does. Dale received her doctorate degree in education leadership from the University of Sarasota. She retired as Director of Personnel Services for Dothan City Schools and previously served as Personnel Assistant, Director of Elementary Curriculum Services, Program Specialist, and a Special Education Teacher in her 39 years with the Dothan City Schools. She currently serves on several community boards, including the Dothan Houston County Intellectual Disabilities Board, the Vaughn Bloomberg Center. Dale joined the Dothan Rotary Club in 1996. She's got you about 2 years. Serving in various areas of responsibility and leadership at the club and at the international level. Dale is a Paul Harris Fellow +3 and received the Harry P. Hall Meritorious Award for the district, the highest individual award that anybody in the district can receive. She's attended many district conferences as well as Rotary International conferences. As we all know who know her, an important aspect of her life is her family, including her husband of 49 years, Tim. Yeah, we're glad you're with us today. And a daughter and a son-in-law, a son, an adorable granddaughter, 3 granddaughters. Dell and Tim are members of the Covenant United Methodist Church. When she's not working, she loves reading, traveling to the beach, spending time with family, and learning. Dell believes that we should provide our children and our society with the best education that we can. Dell, it's an honor and a privilege to be able to bring you up here to the podium.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and like I've said as I've gone around to do my district governor visits, I have to pinch myself every once in a while. Growing up in Camden with 17 people in my senior class and to have this opportunity, it's truly a great, great honor to be here. But I have the opportunity today to introduce the different groups to be recognized. So when I call your group's name, if you would please stand so we can recognize you. Tuskegee University Administration. The Tuskegee University Board of Trustees. The Tuskegee University Archives and Museums staff. Members of the Alabama State Legislature and government officials. All of the Rotarians that are here, to include the members of the Tuskegee Rotary Club too. All Rotarians, please stand. Our polio victims that are present. I know Mr. Bob is here. If y'all will please stand. Any polio victims that are present? Thank you, and we certainly hope you enjoyed today. Members of the Tuskegee City Council and administration officials. Members of the Macon County Economic Development Board. Members of the Macon County Commission and Chamber of Commerce. Friends of Judge Thompson. The March of Dimes staff, again, if you would please stand. Barry, you can stand with them too. The news media that's here. Okay, these family members will be recognized, and we'll call them by name, and then we'll take the microphone to them. Is that right, Bruce? Okay. All right, David Henderson, your family.
All right, how's everybody doing? Okay, it's amazing. Every year, almost every year or two, I hear about something new that my grandfather did that he didn't tell me about. It's like when I ran for Board of Education, they was like, oh yeah, he was on the board too. I didn't even know. But I guess he must have, focused so much on work when he was at work. When he was at home with the family, he was just focused on having fun with his family and, and so forth like that. So it's a privilege and a pleasure to learn more and more about all the great things that he did as time goes on. And I can say on behalf of the family, we are planning to start our own organization that will continue some of his legacy on in the future. And my mother couldn't make it, my wife couldn't make it, we got a son getting registered in school, different types of stuff. So I here on behalf of the family, I just want to say thank you all for acknowledging all the hard work that he put in over the years. And let's just keep building on all that was done in the past. I'm also a great nephew of Booker T. Washington. My grandfather, he was a great nephew of Booker T. Washington, so he probably had some of that good inspiration too. So let's just keep going and going and going. They laid the groundwork, let's keep it going.
Okay, the family of Quentin Gallivan.
Good afternoon. My name is Quentin Gaylord, and this is my wife Sheila, and my first cousin Sharon Rose. My mother's name was Norma Gaylord, and she worked in closely with Dr. Henderson and Dr. Brown, and she worked as a lab cultural supervisor. And like Mr. Chandler said, the cultures were having problems staying alive. So my mother devised techniques for her staff to get air-conditioned units in to protect those cultures. And that was part that she did in this situation. And we're proud of her, and on behalf of the family, my brothers are not here. I have 3 brothers, but my wife and my cousin are here. And we thank Tuskegee University for all that they have done, and like David said, continue doing the things to make Tuskegee University even better. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll have to thank Bruce, Graham, and Sam, our District 6880 leaders that are out there putting it service above self, that have done a great job with this whole project. But Dan, I can't help but mention Tuskegee is also famous for Lionel Richie. Thank you, and the Commodores. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Now we're about to get to one of the real good parts, which is lunch. Before we dive into the food, Trustee Davis has offered our blessing for this. Dr. Morris made reference to it, but I want to make reference again. Joe Turner, thank you and the Macon County Economic Development Authority for your sponsorship of this luncheon and all of the other things that you've done to help make this program a possibility today. Couldn't have done it without you. Thank you very much. Meals are in front of you. We'll take a few minutes to eat, and then we'll get to our keynote speaker. Enjoy your meal.
How you doing, Dave? Good to see you.
I knew your mother.
You knew my mom?
Yeah, I knew her for 3 years.
Oh, okay.
Dr. Henderson was my mentor here. I worked in the building. I think you have a sister.
No, I don't. I have
Another Gaylord here who was in the vegetable. He never forgot anybody.
Thank you.
Well, I miss you Saturday. You were not
You should have taken our breakfast.
Oh, very well. So nice to see
It's wonderful to meet you all. She's one of my heroes.
most excited about online. Finally.
She said, the president said she wanted to learn.
Thank you.
It's on Amazon. Go down, raise it, raise down. Yes, ma'am. That's the title of it.
added treat that we had not expected. So we're excited about this. But I would like to ask Dr. William Wade Jr. to come up and tell, you know, we can tell other people's stories, but they're not the same as that person telling their own story. So I'm going to ask Dr. Wade to tell his story. This is just an added treat. This was unexpected, so we're so glad to have this.
Good afternoon, everybody. As she said, my name is Dr. William Wade Jr. And my family and I, 5 children, and my sister, ordinarily take, every year, we take a trip together someplace in the United States. And this year, we decided to take a civil rights tour in Alabama. So Monday, we started off in Birmingham, then went to Selma. Next day, we came back yesterday to Montgomery for tours. And so we're on our way to Savannah. So since Tuskegee was close to Montgomery, he said, well, we'll just stop by Tuskegee Campus University just to take a look, etc. So as we were touring the campus, we saw signs concerning this luncheon and polio. And we knew that Henrietta Lacks was associated with the discovery of treatment for polio vaccine. And the reason I thought I would stop by and say them just unexpectedly. I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, and I'm a physician, and just to put the time frame in perspective, I was born in 1945. And I grew up in this little town in Baltimore County. And the name of that town is Turner Station. Well, I don't know, I assume most of you have read the Henrietta Lacks book about Scaloo. Chapter 9 in that book is entitled Turner Station. And that's the small black community where I was raised. Also, surprisingly, incidentally, my father was a physician in that community, Turner Station. In fact, he was one of 2 physicians, but he was the main physician in that community. And if you look on your GPS, you can look at, put in a address, William Wade Avenue, and it'll take you to Turner Station because the street which I grew up on was Oak Avenue, and the community loved my father so much that they renamed the street William Wade Avenue because of his contributions. Well, turns out that William Wade, patient, was Henrietta Lacks. And he was the first person to see Henrietta Lacks. And my father was the one who referred Henrietta Lacks to Johns Hopkins Hospital to be treated. Wow. This is, and you can look on your computer search, you can just put in William Wade, Henrietta Lacks. In fact, in 2017, I gave a talk at Johns Hopkins. Every year, Hopkins has a Henrietta Lacks conference, and I was asked to give a story about my father, which I did. And that is online. It's sometime off and on. Sometimes they take it off and put it back. But Henrietta Lacks, John Hopkins lecture, 2017. So my father died before Scaloo wrote the book, so she wasn't able to interview him. And I didn't know about the story of Henrietta Lacks until I read the book. But the community where I grew up, the still a pretty tight community, warm community. So when I went there, and I go back there periodically, in fact, two of my daughters live near the community, and they're currently active in the community. In fact, two of them are here. Not to stand up. Yeah, they know the the Lax family very well, and they work with the Henrietta Lax family. So I just thought it was something interesting, and just passing through. I'm kind of surprised that, so I thought that's something that might interest you. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer. Okay, I introduce my family, my sister, Linda Williams, Najma, Marianne, Lisa, Akia, and Idris.
So this added to your vacation too.
Yeah, very much so, yeah. The two girls work with the Henrietta Lax family very closely. They know what are their names? Albert. Alfred, yeah.
Yeah, Alfred.
Anyway.
Lauren. Thank you. And we have one other. Miss Walter Sapp.
Well, I really came because of Judge Thompson, a friend of Judge Thompson. But my husband, Dr. Walter J. Sapp, was a long-time scientist and did a lot for science here at Tuskegee University. And it's my pleasure to be here today.
See, this is what makes life so fun. Thank you. Now enjoy your meal.
How are you? Oh, really?
Thank you.
Can I have your attention, please? Ladies and gentlemen, I know you probably have not finished your lunch yet, so please continue to eat. But in the interest of time and to respect your time here today, we're going to move forward. It's my pleasure to ask Joe Turner, the Executive Director of the Macon County Economic Development Authority, to come up and introduce our keynote speaker. Joe?
Thank you, Brand, and thanks to all you've done, Brand, for making today possible. It's my honor to introduce our guest speaker today, and he is a native son of Tuskegee, and I think one of the great legacies of the Carter administration. And I want to thank President Carter, especially for Judge Myron Thompson. Judge Thompson is a United States District Judge for the Middle District of Alabama. He was nominated to that seat in September 1980 by President Carter, and he served as Chief Judge from 1991 to 1998. Judge Thompson is a graduate of Yale College and Yale Law School. He served as Assistant Attorney General of Alabama from 1972 to 1974. He was the first African-American Assistant Attorney General for the state of Alabama, the first African-American bar examiner for the state, and the second African-American federal judge in the state. This year, in May of 2022, Yale University awarded an honorary Doctor of Laws degree to Judge Thompson, and in doing so, they stated, "Audacious advocate and learned legal scholar, you have made justice both a career and a calling. In the courtroom, you tenaciously defend equity, liberty, and dignity for all. In the classroom, you teach others to walk the same path. Your long service to your home state inspires us. Your commitment to your alma mater humbles us. As a testament to your impact, and with the ultimate pleasure, we award you your third Yale degree, Doctor of Laws." Wow. He has received many other awards. Judge Thompson was born here in Tuskegee and attended Chandler's Children's House in Tuskegee Institute High School. We're glad too that he told me that he still has a full slate of cases. And thank God that he's still on the bench. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to present the Honorable Judge Myron Thompson. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Pleasure to be here. President Morris, Mayor, City, other honored guests, friends, and folks who are here. This is a speech about dignity. Where do I begin? I will begin with the building, and then the people who work there, and then the children who were treated there, including me. The building, Johnny Andrew Memorial Hospital. It was incredibly imposing, indeed gargantuan. The portico at the entrance was 4 columns, towering columns. And behind, to each side of that main building was a complex that included an array of 6 or 8 huge dorm-like buildings. It was awe-inspiring. At one point, more than 95% of the patients who attended that hospital were non-students. It truly was a sight to behold. The main entrance was like a grand hotel. The structure said to all who entered that you are an important person, and you are in an important building. As I walked into that structure each time, perhaps when I was 6 or 7 or 8 years old, tightly grasping my mother's hand, I trembled, not so much out of fear, or actually was afraid, but also out of awe. It was the most magnificent structure that I have ever seen. Now you might think that I am describing this only from the memory as a child, and small I was. Indeed, I wondered the same, but I found some pictures of it later. And lo and behold, I misjudged it as a child. It was bigger, much bigger than I had ever imagined. From my low perspective as a child, I had not taken it all in. I in fact could not see it all. I had not walked those endless and endless halls, those endless and endless corridors and rooms. I had misjudged it all right, but I had what you could say, in such a word, underjudged it. After entering the main building, my mother and I turned to the right to walk to the children's wing. To be sure, I was grasping her soft, larger hand, but in retrospect, I think she was probably grasping my hand equally as hard. Both of us had to be prepared for the unexpected. And the children's wing, which was still standing, was newer. All light, airy wards, sun decks, treatment pools, a physical therapy room, plaster room, laboratories, race shop, even a recreation hall. Sunny white sheets were everywhere, with nurses sort of bubbling, bustling about, all in white and all in smiles. Now, the people who work there, there were dozens and dozens of people who worked in the polio or children's department of that hospital. Only a half dozen or so actually worked with me. And of those, my memory is strong as to probably less than a very few. I thought that on this occasion, with only a few minutes to talk, I would share thoughts about some of those very few. First, there was Dr. Chenault, putting up the sculpture. Everyone, my mother, my aunts, my uncles, my friends, parents of friends, my teachers, just everyone thought he was bigger than life. For he healed the children in our community. And there he was to heal me. I remember him as kind and gentle. He would not speak down to me, but rather would stoop down and talk to me on my level. There's a picture of him in your book. He is not looking down at the child. He is down there with the child. And to him, no one was more important than that child when he was talking. Actually, to be candid, if you also look at the picture, I don't know how many pictures are in the brochure, but he had little bushy eyebrows. Have you seen him? and he had a bushy mustache, and they were all both big. And I thought he reminded me of Groucho Marx. I was waiting for him to tell a joke. He was a funny looking guy. But that was part of his humility, his ability to woo children. Dr. Hume, also in many of your books. Dr. Hume eventually replaced Dr. Chenault, head of the polio part of the hospital. I'm not sure whether he performed one of my surgeries or both of them, or whether Dr. Chenault did both. I'm so young then, my memory just can't quite separate out the two. What I do remember was that he was my physician during my early through late teens. And what I do remember is that he and his family lived just 3 houses down from me and my family. And that he was always concerned that I was too physically active and would undo the delicate muscle transfers made through my surgery with my roller skating and tree climbing. An interesting nomenclature used back then was that one had a good limb and a bad limb. In fact, if you look at some of the literature, there's always playing with his good limb and his bad limb. You know, you had a good arm, you had a bad arm, you had a good leg, and you had a bad leg. And that's the way they sort of talked to you when you had polio. I always thought that nomenclature was rather odd and even humorous. I always renamed it. And I always called it my good leg and my naughty leg. And one day when Dr. Hume saw me and his son playing in the yard, he had to be my age, he complained to my mother that I might be overdoing it. And he said, you know, he's going to fall out of that tree and he's going to break that leg, and he is going to undo all that surgery. He did. In fact, I think he'd probably seen us roller skating and attempting to climb the tree. Well, my mother confronted me, and I responded that, sure enough, my bad leg had been naughty. And I asked her whether she thought we should send it to bed. Whenever I could make my mother laugh, I knew I had won the argument. That was over. Dr. Hume went on to be a leading, prominent proponent of recruiting and expanding the opportunities for blacks to be orthopedic surgeons. Dr. Henderson. Now, some of you have spoken about Dr. Henderson earlier. He was formerly known as Jimmy Henderson. He was a powerhouse, brilliance around Tuskegee. He knew everything from an esoteric coin to an esoteric nuclear principle. There was nothing that Jimmy did not know. I don't think I'd have to call. It was therefore not surprising that he was instrumental in the development and distribution of the Salk polio vaccine. But brilliance aside, the thing he loved the most was children. He was the leader of the Boy Scouts in this area. Anybody who knew him knew that all he, I don't know when he went home. He said he played with you. I don't know when he had the time. If you found 10 or more boys gathered together, and if he was nearby, rest assured, he was there with them to find out what they were up to, and if they were up to nothing, to make sure they were up to something. That was Dr. And if he saw me, he was concerned that I might not be up to anything good, he would send me home to my mom, but only after he had given me a firm lecture first. That was the type of neighborhood we had. You were never too smart or too big or too high and mighty not to care about the kids around you. Norma Gaylord, you talked about her as well. She was a chemistry chemistry professor and researcher at Tuskegee, and was the project supervisor overseeing 10 other scientists who worked as cell culture technicians on the salt vaccine project. As with Dr. Henderson, her greatest love was children. Just like many and most of the other mothers in this town called Tuskegee, she was my biggest fan, and she was the biggest fan of any child she knew. In fact, that was just not normal Gaylord, that was the Gaylord who lived in this community. Dr. Campbell, old to talk about Dr. Campbell. Describing him as a challenge, he was the pediatrician for the hospital. My most powerful memory of him is his coming to my room, my hospital room, to see me after one of my surgeries. I think it must have been reported to him that I was screaming and crying uncontrollably, probably in pain. I just remember his sitting on the edge of my bed and telling me, in rather strong terms, stop it. After that, I don't think I ever cried again, no matter what was done. And I hated him immensely. If he came into a room, I would leave. He had a son my age. When I went to their house to play with his son, and I saw him, I would say to myself, there must be a God, but Dr. Campbell is not my dad. But in retrospect, that he came to see me that night, and remember it was that night, he did it personally. He didn't send a nurse. He sat on my bed and spoke to me as if I were his son. The medicine he gave me may have been too strong, but it was definitely administered with love, and it shaped my character. G.O. Washington. In reviewing the history of polio treatment in Tuskegee, I came across a wonderful and just surprising discovery. Tuskegee had, through Dr. Chanel, all these doctors, of all things, a brace shop within the Department of Mechanical Industries. Can you believe that? This school, for these black kids from all over the United States, made braces for them on site, on campus. It boggles to my mind to think these people at this college not only dreamed of such, they did such. I doubt that there's any hospital in this nation that for its kids, or any hospital in this nation that loved its kids so much that they would literally do everything for them. We did not have to go off campus to get our braces. And the head of that department at one time was G.O. Washington. There is an old picture of him examining the braces on the college campus, which were eventually given to the students, and I wore braces. Many a Sunday afternoon, he would join my family for dinner. And not once did I know that he, sitting across the table from me, was likely responsible for the braces I was wearing on my legs under that same table. G.O. Washington later came on to be the local head of all things at the Tuskegee Airmen. If you go out to the Airmen Museum, they have actually replicated his office. The nurses, oh, there were old ones, there were young ones, some of them were surely trainees. But one thing they all had in common was that they treated each child in their care as if that child was one of theirs. They played with you, they held you, they soothed you, and when you missed your mom or your father or your brother and your sister, they talked to you and made you feel like you were theirs. The children. Statistics, even when impressive, are cold. The tragedy of human suffering, the futility of human crippling, the dawning hope of human usefulness, and physical well-being cannot be conveyed in terse reports of numbers of patients admitted and discharged, even at this hospital for the children. You cannot tell the story without telling the story of those who were at the heart of it, the children. Here are the stories of just three that I found. Mary Lee, a stocky, round-faced little girl of 12, was working in the cotton fields near Selma, Alabama, about a mile from her home. It was a rented field, and from it her father and mother, 4 sisters and 6 brothers, would rest most of the family income for the year. Naturally, they all worked. Mary Lee was among the hardest workers in the family. That's why her brother was surprised when she put down her hoe and complained, "My head hurts." She walked across the Sunday fields and along the winding red clay road to her home, where her mother told her, "Honey, lie down and rest so you feel right smart." That was on Thursday. Mary Lee rested until Sunday morning, but she did not feel right smart. She felt, if anything worse, so bad that after church, her mother sent to the Crossroads doctor. He discovered she could not move her arms and legs. Diagnosis was made: infantile paralysis. There was nothing to do but keep her quiet in bed and have the public nurse visit each week to try to work her legs and arms, according to her mother. While her fever later receded and she began to eat, her eyes were only normally bright, but her legs were grotesquely drawn up under her. She had to be carried to church each Sunday in the car. And this is according to her mother. Even when she was laying down, she was fixed like that. She was sitting. In other words, she couldn't stretch out because her legs were so crippled and drawn up. She was admitted to Tuskegee Hospital in 1941 in April. For more than a year until her discharge in May 1942, Mary Lee lived in Tuskegee. By the way, some of these kids lived at the hospital for 1 to 2 years. Through an operation, her hamstring muscles were transplanted, which was done in May. She was given muscle re-education, carefully nursed and fed, and when she was well enough, her schooling was continued in the hospital. She walked out of the hospital using 2, what they call penny-type walking sticks, her head held high. When the wood truck stalled on that country road outside Montgomery, Alabama, on July 22, 1942, 12-year-old Edward got out and tried to help his father. 2 brothers and 2 sisters pushed him. The family ran a wood yard, making deliveries in the city. Unless the truck moved, business ceased. But after a time, Edward gave up. His mother said his head hurt him so bad he felt like it was going to burst. Did she She added that was the onset of what she called that affliction. For 2 weeks, Edward lay in bed, unable to move. Gradually, his head was carried so back, his head was back so far, that he couldn't even straighten it out. An ambulance finally took him, yes, to Tuskegee. For 7 months, Edward lay flat on his back. Then for 4 months, he sat in a chair. Finally, he was graduated to crutches. In March, almost a year later, he still was in the hospital but walking everywhere inside the hospital. On the Sunday, across the campus, his right leg dragging without braces. He had the joy of just walking. John. There were 14 children in a fatherless family in August 1941. What was then called a Negro farm near Canton, Georgia, and it was there that infantile paralysis struck again. 4 boys, 10 girls, and all reasonably healthy. Until first 1, then 2, finally 3 of the boys became sick, took to their beds, vomiting and feverish. One hot day, bright day, toward the end of the month, all 3 were carried through the entrance of where else? Tuskegee Hospital. 3 in one family. It was most unusual. Well, it was unusual in that it usually only affected one person in the family. It didn't usually affect the other kids. I'm not sure why, and I don't think people really know why. 3 in one family, because it was so unusual, warranted bringing all of them to the hospital. The next day, however, 2 of the boys were dead. Only John remained alive. John's hand and both legs were afflicted. All joint motion was limited. He was in pain. Splints were applied to both his legs and both his arms. That was in August. By November, no splints were needed for his legs. By May 1942, he was discharged from the hospital without crutches or braces, and with a newly acquired skill of bicycle riding. John had received a variety of treatments not possible either in most hospitals in this entire state. Mary Lee, Edward, and John. These are just their stories. These are stories that were repeated for many of the children who went to the hospital here. Some ended tragically, and some much more joyfully. Years later, after my surgeries were over, but rehabilitation was still in swing for me, I had the occasion to visit others in other hospitals throughout Alabama. Some of those I visited were members of my own family. There were all kinds of illnesses, not polio, just anything. It was a shockingly rude awakening. These black Alabamians did not walk through the front door of a stately building like Tuskegee. They walked most often through the basement. And that even assumes the hospital would even take them because they were black. These hospital rooms were not on the first to top floors, bright and airy, like they were at the Tuskegee Hospital where we polio victims were treated. They were in the basement, dark and sometimes dank and dingy. Doctors did not freely touch them or treat them as if they were, as Dr. Chenault and Dr. Newman treated me, the only thing that mattered, the only person that mattered in the world. If you had to stand in one of those hospitals, it was not because no other seats were available. Oh, and nurses. I can only imagine that in these hospitals throughout Alabama, these non-Tuskegee hospitals, nurses did not hold them and soothe them and cuddle them and talk to them the way the nurses at Tuskegee Hospital did to me and the other polio victims, where my mother could not be there. Dignity. I said this was a speech about dignity. Much has been written about the wonderful treatment these and other doctors and medical professionals provided at Tuskegee, in particular the polio hospital. And truly, it was incredible. But something else Dr. Chenault, Dr. Henderson, and the others provided was equally as important to the hundreds of children who came there from far and wide to be treated. They treated not only our bodies, they treated our spirits, our souls, from the stately building to the stately staff. They made a home for us second to none. They gave us dignity.
Judge, I have something for you. We started putting our program together. Graham Campbell said we need something special for people to remember by. So we've got, I guess I call it a challenge. As you can see, it's a replica of our statue with polio on the mount.
Yes.
And I was really concerned, really busy, that our federal judge did not seem to have an appropriate gavel for his day-to-day work. So we took up a large collection and bought a gavel. So this gavel is not just any gavel. In years past, our member Paul Harris would actually come to the town of Tuskegee to get away from the cold winters in Chicago. And throughout the world, in fact, he claimed he planted his friendship trees in every continent in this world. And he planted 2 of those in town square of Tuskegee. With the time that Mother Nature took care of those and they failed, we had some wonderful Rotarians that took these trees, preserved the wood, and they made gables out of those now. So we have a gavel for you to do your daily work. And I've got a brochure because of time. I'm not going into a lot of detail, but I've got a brochure in here.
Oh, great.
And I've got a small article where Paul Harris was actually Tuskegee. And this is expected.
Oh, it has my name on it.
It's got an inscription on it that talks about a little bit about the history. There's some folks in this room that can give you a lot more information than I do.
Wonderful.
And it is so special, it is even numbers.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
Every gavel they make out of this Paul Harris friendship tree is numbered. So this is a keepsake. If you must use it and have it eventually, go ahead.
Well, the only thing I can say is all 3 of my sons are down Rome, but I sure wish that I had it. Thank you.
Let me continue. We're trying to watch our time because if we're not over at the unveiling at 2 o'clock, we'll all be in trouble. Just one at a time. My phone has died, so you're going to have to help me with the time. I had mentioned earlier that it's all about the dollar. Well, it seems that it is these days and time, but as I've been told, yes, it's all about the dollar, but it's more important about what the dollar will do. Well, our project today certainly didn't come free, and it took a lot of effort by a lot of people, a lot of supporters, but I want to just real briefly talk about those individuals or foundations that supported this particular project. John Watson Foundation, he's a Rotarian in my club. We appreciate that. The Sam Adams Foundation, Sam is with us today. The state of Alabama, I think Graham's already mentioned, what the state has done for this particular project, and I think there'll be enough funding to move along with the Heal Cell project. The Caring Foundation, it was a supporter. And then our own Rotary District 6880, there was 3 different grants that was written, and we received dollars from those. So those are some of the major ones. But there's also Friends of Rotary. Now, the Rotarian in the room that probably came the furthest to be with us today is Elizabeth Stevens from Mobile Rotary Club, and they supported this project. Obviously, the Tuskegee University Board of Trustees is certainly important and friends of this particular project. The Macon County Economic Development Authority, and I'm just going to tell you one more time, thank you for supporting and hosting this luncheon today. People like Senator Billy Beasley, we wouldn't be here today without your support. We thank you. Arthur Orr's not with us, but State Senator Orr was a big support. And also not with us is State Representative Steve Klaus. He was a big supporter. And there were some other Rotarians like Bob Rutter and Harold Lewis that donated also. Even though we paid some of these people to do different projects, Southside Granite, they worked their buns off and worked every detail of our project. We thank them. Big Ben Construction, if you don't know Big Benny, he can pour you some concrete. But, we talked about that 1,000 pieces of puzzle, and truly, not one person could have put all this together. And, Dana Chandler, Karen Hopkins, and Cheryl Burgess, the list just goes on and on, that are friends of this project and made those things happen. So we certainly appreciate that. What do you have now for us? That's correct, John. I'm supposed to introduce you. Graham was doing such a wonderful job, I was going to just let him do the rest of it. It's my time to make an introduction there. Well, I tell you what, there's nobody that loves the world of Rotary any more than John Durham. Not only does he live in the great state of Tennessee, but he comes to Alabama on a regular basis. In fact, John Durham is a retired head chair of the Campbell and Associates Consulting Engineers. He joined the firm as an engineer in '65 after 4 years in the United States Air Force. Thank you for your service. He served on boards of several organizations, including the board and executive committee as the chair of the Public Education Foundation, the board and executive committee of Orange Grove Center, Blood Assurance, and Erlanger Health System, which is a 700-bed hospital. He's also founder and treasurer of the Chattanooga State Technical Community College Foundation, president of the Tennessee J.C. Foundation, and chairman of the Miracle League Chattanooga, which raised funds and constructed a specially designed playground. So we got one of those in Dothan also, as you well know. He is the founder of Camp Discovery, a camp for intellectually and developmentally disabled children and adults. So, well, he was actually, believe it or not, he was the Tennessee Young Man of the Year way back in 1970. You remember? Very young man. He was a volunteer fundraiser of the year in '92 and Tennessee Community Organizations Volunteer of the Year. He is the recipient of the Boy Scouts Silver Beaver Award and Arthritis Foundation Circle of Hope Award. In 2013, the White House recognized him as a champion of change. Wow. Durham joined Rotary in 1976 and served Rotary as president of the Rotary International in 2016 and 27, and then he was a whole host of different Rotary International positions over the years. He also served as Rotary International President Nominating Committee 4 times, served as chair 3 times. He currently is serving as the chair of the Countdown to History Committee, which raises $50 million per year for what? The eradication of polio. I can't believe you, John. Wow. He served on the International Polio Plus Committee and the committee to select a new peace center in the MENA region. He negotiated an agreement and extensions with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where Rotary will provide $50 million annually to the eradication of polio, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation will provide a much-needed $100 million. So that's a pretty good deal, John. Come up and share with us a few minutes.
Thank you very much, Bruce, and I know that I'm on a strict timetable because I've got 2 people here that will be sure that they pull my coattails if I don't sit down quick enough. You'll stand up when you need to?
Yes.
Let me put my foot on your foot. Thank you for the opportunity for Judy and I to be, my wife Judy back there, and has traveled with me for several years as we have traveled all around this world and this country. And we have been to several clubs in the areas of Alabama and enjoy the friendship here very much. Judge, you talked about it's bigger than we think it is. You talked about human dignity. She also gave a strong history about this university and what this university has done as far as polio is concerned. And you were talking about back during the 40s and how that it has progressed since then. Think about, if you could think about what was happening in Alabama back then, just think about what was happening all around the world. Because polio was not just for Alabama or Tennessee or Georgia or the United States of America. It was all over the world. We were fortunate in the United States that we had Dr. Salt, we had the people here at this university, we had Dr. Saban. Those other countries weren't that fortunate because they didn't have the technology, they didn't have the dedication, the love that was going on here to have a cure for polio. There's a Chinese proverb that says, a journey of 1,000 miles must begin with one single step. A journey of 1,000 miles must begin with one single step. You were part of that single step, but you were very much a part of the journey for the eradication of polio. If it weren't for what you did, we wouldn't have had the vaccines. If it weren't for Rotarians sitting in this room that have gone to foreign countries to do national immunization days, we would have had more crippled people. The judge mentioned a couple of boys that died. There's been a lot of people that died because of polio. But you helped solve those problems. You see, I look at problems as opportunities. You seized the opportunity as you began to work to help eradicate polio. Paul Harris was here. Paul Harris didn't know anything about polio, didn't do anything about polio. But in 1979, Rotary put out an application worldwide for projects to help signify our 75th anniversary. It came from the $750,000 doctor in the Philippines, the government in the Philippines, put in a request for Rotary International. And they asked Rotary for this $750,000. Purpose of $750,000 was to provide vaccine and to help eradicate polio from the Philippines. It's the first time it was ever outside the country that a massive project like this would be undertaken. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one single step. It was that step in the Philippines that proved that polio could be eradicated from the entire country. Now, the United States was free about that time of polio. Polio could come into the United States at any time. The wild polio virus. Rotary went to the World Health Assembly and said, we have proven that this could be done. You see, there has to be no polio for 3 years before the area can be certified polio-free. They turned us down. They said, you can't do it. You're a non-governmental organization. You don't have continued leadership, constant leadership. You change leaders every year. So what did Rotary do? Do you think they took that as a setback? No. They took it as an opportunity to move forward. It will cost about $120 million in order to eradicate the world. Comment was made a while ago about things being bigger than you might think they are. I don't know what Rotary would have done if they had known it was going to cost us $900 million a year to eradicate polio. I suspect we'd try to figure out how to do it. So Rotary took it upon themselves to raise $120 million. Well, I asked one of the gentlemen that helped start that program back then, I said, how did you come up with $120 million? They said there was about 120 million children under the age of 5 in the world. And for 60 cents, we could be sure that child wouldn't be crippled or die. And I said, well, did y'all ever think about people who are going to still have babies? And then we had to reach all those too. We raised $247 million. Rotarians out of their pockets put up $247 million. Well, would you believe that the World Health Assembly then thought it was a pretty good idea? So it became a program in 1988. 1,000 people per day, children, were getting polio. 1,000 a day. So this problem was bigger than what we thought it was going to be. 125 different countries were endemic with polio. It was bigger, as it just said, than what we thought it might be. That did not deter Rotary. We ran out of money twice. We give our money to the World Health Organization. An organization was formed called the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. Rotary is a founding member, WHO, UNICEF, and the CDC. It wasn't until 2007 that all of a sudden the Rotary Foundation became $100 million each. Now, there's been a lot of work done before that. That don't just happen. So don't walk out the door thinking we'll get $100 million. But we've been working with the Gates Foundation. But they sent us $100 million. And here's the beautiful thing about Rotary. It all started because people in Tuskegee, Alabama, had the dream and a vision. We're just carrying that dream and vision on. The Gates Foundation said, I'll give you this, we give you this $100 million in November of 2007. They said, we want two things out of it. Number one, you have to spend that $100 million by December 31st of 2008. We didn't have a campaign. We didn't know what we were going to do. They said, I want you to give that money to the eradication of polio. But then I want by June of 2010 for you to raise $100 million. Now, I don't know about anybody in this room, but when I was asked to chair that campaign, I sure wasn't going to tell Bill Gates no. We were about halfway through, and he said, I'll give you another 100 if you'll raise another 100. But we'll go to 2012. Well, still wasn't going to tell him no. But you know, he told me, I asked Bill when we were in New York one time, I said, why didn't you give this money to Rotary? Why didn't you could have given it to the countries, you could have given it to WHO, you could have given it to UNICEF. Why did you pick Rotary to give this money to? He said, because Rotarians have the passion, they have the commitment, they have boots on the ground. Just as happened right here at this university. You had the purpose, you had the passion, you had the people that were willing to dedicate themselves to develop a vaccine, to work with solve and save it in order to make it happen. We now have an agreement with the Gates Foundation through 2026. The strategic plan is that we will have no cases of vaccine-derived polio or the wild polio virus by the end of 2023. By 2026, hopefully we'll be able to declare the world polio-free. You're making that happen. You started this program just like Rotary started in 1979, and you're staying with it. Where are we today? 19 cases as of this morning. 1 in Afghanistan, 14 in Pakistan because we weren't able to get to a lot of those war-torn areas before. We got 4 in Mozambique. Yes, there was a case of vaccine derived in New York. That person was unvaccinated, 20 years old. The genetics of that particular strain of the polio vaccine, polio, came from Israel to London to the United States. Don't tell me polio is not a plane ride away. And don't tell me that vaccinations don't work. They do. You've proved it. Thank you for letting me be here.
John, thank you so much for your comment. As several folks in the room know, in the real world, I work in the Alabama legislature. And in the House of Representatives, representatives, when they go to the well to speak, they have a time limit. And the Speaker of the House is fond of saying, and the gentleman's time has expired. Well, I wasn't about to stand up and look at you and say, the gentleman's time has expired. You did a great job. Sam?
Well, I'm glad to be here, and I know you're glad I'm here. We're going to do this real quick. But I do want to say, first and foremost, thank you so much for the staff and the wonderful job they did in providing this. This has been a great event, and it's a wonderful event. And I want to mention to you that Jennifer Jones is the president of Rotary International this year. And her theme is Imagine Rotary. And our vision statement in Rotary applies perfectly for today. Because it means together we unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in your communities, and in ourselves. And that's what we've accomplished here by recognizing the efforts of these wonderful people in combating and eradicating polio. We'll leave here just a minute to unveil a
celebration of something that has gone long overdue being recognized. And today, with all the work of so many dignitaries here, every one of y'all are dignitaries. And I appreciate, and we appreciate, all the work and collaboration that everybody has contributed to see this a success. And without any further ado, thank you very much for being here.
As we adjourn, we will move to John A. Kinney Hall. As you get over there, there's some chairs set up, but also the Legacy Museum is directly behind the monument that has been erected. We invite you either before or after the unveiling to take a tour of that museum. I think you'll have your eyes open even more to the history that is Tuskegee. Thank you for being here, and we look forward to seeing you over at the unveiling.